Assalamu alaikum, and peace to you, and to the rest of you. Well, general greetings and well wishes. Today, as I'm recording this, the date is March 16th, and yesterday, and March 15th, we know that a man in New Zealand who is from Australia walked into two masjids in Christchurch, New Zealand, and opened fire. And the last death toll I heard was 59 with 20 injured. And apparently he's already made an appearance in court. I'm shocked that the court was open on Saturday, but apparently he's made an appearance. And the thing that's surprising about this to me is that he was able to get these guns and approach two masjids with these guns. I'm not really sure how or why he was able to do so, but at the end of the day, we black folks have every right to point the finger at the rest of the melanated world and at the rest of the Muslim community and say, we told you so. In the United States, from which the shooter drew his inspiration according to his own manifesto, white supremacists have been able to organize themselves. They have been heavily monitored, but not really stopped beforehand. And now after Trump, the law enforcement agencies responsible for monitoring them to see to it that they stayed within the First and Second Amendment rights have been unfunded, and they've been disbanded and reassigned to other duties. So simply put, while there's black identity extremism, and that is prosecutable, that is actually criminalized, black identity extremism, whatever that is supposed to be, is illegal and somebody has been arrested for it. There's nothing illegalizing white supremacy. And so people wonder why it is that black Americans especially, and even other black folks, tend to get angry when we hear people in or outside of any nation, anywhere on the globe, say some subconsciously racist BS. Like a student of mine yesterday who said regarding my co-teacher, oh, look, he is an angel but black. And when I said, hey, man, actually, that's a racist statement. No, I would be causing problems for him if I was racist. I told the student, no, I don't mean that it is hatefully racist, but it is subconsciously racist. And here's how. No, I'm not. And he kept interrupting. Now, mind you, if you want to hear real bias, I can give you bias right now. This piece of shit, rat, bastard, subhuman, hypocrite Bedouin has no right to interrupt me when I'm twice his age and much better educated than this guy is. And he doesn't even hate anybody. He just spouted some subconsciously racist stuff that shows the brainwashing to which we're all subjected. But he had the nerve to interrupt me when I was trying to tell him how to avoid putting his foot in his mouth later on and getting himself into trouble. So I said, okay, well, you're smart and you're an intelligent student and you are an active student, but you're white. And then he understood it. Then he got it because I put the conjunction, but. You say something good, but this is the origin of such person. Well, now you understand how racist it sounds if you did not understand it before when I began to tell you about this. We black folks have every right to look at the rest of the melanated world and the rest of the Muslim world and say, we effing told you so. White supremacy was and is the major national threat in the United States and the major international threat around the world. That was what colonization was all about. If you come from a nation that was ever colonized and you think that the world is not about race and it's about class, then you ask yourselves why your people never colonized Europe, but some European nation colonized your people. It was white supremacy. Ask why the Europeans were not busy colonizing each other and fighting each other at the times that they were busy colonizing your nations in the tropics. Figure that part out. And even not in the tropics. Now, if you're a white New Zealander, it doesn't matter to you because you're British. You just got a different passport now because New Zealand broke away. That's all. But now go and ask the original New Zealanders if there was white supremacy that was responsible for the colonization and see what they say. Go and ask the original Australians if it was white supremacy that was responsible for the colonization and see what they say. Ask them about the atrocities committed against the original Australians. And now this guy walks into a masjid. Well, I must say this particular fascist, he understood something, and that is that if you want to make white supremacy a religion, the antithesis of it is Islam. Many of you Muslims don't realize this yet. You want to go along with white supremacy as long as it's not violent and loud, as long as it doesn't involve gunshots and it doesn't come with the flavor of violence that this man brought to the masajid. You're fine with it as long as it is that quiet white supremacy that sits in the back of your mind and makes you say stupid things like, oh, that man is a genius, but black. Oh, she is gorgeous, but she's black. And make you go and get bleaching creams and buy them. Tell your kids not to stay out in the sun and play for too long because they'll get too dark. Tell your sons not to marry someone that's too dark. Tell your daughters not to marry someone that's too dark. And we're talking just within your own individual ethnicities and racial groups. If it is that flavor of white supremacy, you don't mind because you're the one going along with white supremacy in that case. But when that white supremacy takes on a violent nature and it comes after you and your masjid because they know something you forgot, which is that the religion of Allah is against white supremacy, it is the antithesis of it, then you have problems and you want to cry. African American Muslims and even some African Muslims are looking at you now in New Zealand and saying, what are you crying about? For one, why, if he was so outnumbered, did all of you get shot and nobody ever killed this man in self-defense? Where were the heroes? That's one of the questions they legitimately are asking. He had one gun. He had to cock and reload and all that other stuff, whatever kind of gun that was. It wasn't enough to stop people from swarming him if they chose to do it. It was possible. If he went in there and all of them, even unarmed, instead of just one man trying to be a hero, if all of them unarmed had gone and fought this man, they could have turned a gun on him and blown his goddamn brains out. And then the Muslims that did die would not have just died in vain, but the killer would be dead too. That would have been great for New Zealand. You would have saved the government the money for the trial and the money for his incarceration later. And it would have been self-defense because the man was trying to kill you. So do you not understand how you failed? You are not who your grandparents used to be. See, I can't say your grandparents because many of them were colonized. And they were mentally colonized, and their own grandparents were mentally colonized, but maybe their grandparents were not mentally or physically colonized, and they weren't easy to do it to. But somewhere down the line, you lost it. We African Americans lost a lot of this too, I'll be honest, but we ain't lost it completely. There is a reason that this man walked into two massages, two of them in Christchurch, and opened fire, and it didn't get a wound. He didn't break a skin. He doesn't have a cut or a scab on him. But nobody does this to the black mosque in the United States. They know better. They know it ain't gonna work. You ain't gonna pull that off. That happens, you ain't gonna walk out of there alive. You can't walk into the women's section of an African American masjid and start opening fire and not have some kind of wounds. You couldn't even, maybe if you had a fully automatic machine gun that never stopped firing, you might be able to pull that off. Maybe then. And that's only because everybody would be dead. But otherwise, somebody would get the idea to go rushing after you. Somebody would think, well, wait a minute, he can't take all of us. And in all honesty, the other thing, too, is that in the U.S., somebody's allowed to have a gun. Someone is allowed. Someone is not prevented from having a weapon. Yet and still, they will go into the masajid where there aren't many African Americans. And then New Zealand, they went where the black folks were from outside the country. These were not African Americans. They were Africans, but not African Americans. This man got the idea from white America, not America people. He got it from white America. And what I'm telling you now, I'm telling all of you, if you are just not white, or if you have a different religion, especially if you're Muslim, or both, I'm telling you, white supremacy is the major threat within the United States and internationally around the world. That is the major threat. No government has made white supremacy illegal, except the closest has come to Germany illegalizing the neo-Nazi movements. That's the closest that it's come. And a lot of Germans feel great being white, which is normal, but a lot of them actually feel, I mean, I shouldn't say a lot, but there are groups of Germans who feel like, you know what, damn it, we're German, we're white, we want to beat it, we want to stay that way, and we don't want to blend in and disappear into some other group of people. Let me tell you, I want to tell something to black Arabs and to black Somalis and to black, well, to anybody that's black and it's Muslim. You know how white supremacists want to make sure that the white race always survives by not mixing? And they will disown family members who are willing to marry someone of another race, especially black. The same thing happens in the Arabian Gulf. Families who are not black, so to speak, but they aren't white enough to be recognized as white by white folks, still think that they're white. And if you want to marry a black person from the same tribe, they would tell you, no, we will disown you. You don't do that. You don't marry black. What'll happen to white people if you marry black? This is a conversation they have, and they don't even hate black people. It would never cross their mind to shoot a suspect because he's black. It would never cross their mind. I'm talking suspect now. You rob a bank. If the police don't have to shoot you, they're not supposed to. And it doesn't change because you're black. This is something, this is a region of the world where they don't have the mindset of not letting you get a job because you're black or paying you less because you're black. It doesn't creep into their mindset. They may think about doing this because you're from a poor country, but not because you're black. Yet and still, when it comes to marriage, when it comes to their genetic survival, they have the same reaction and reflex as a real, true white person would have. You do not marry. In this family, we do not marry black because we are not going to wipe out the white people. They want to protect the white race to which they don't even belong. This is global. It is everywhere. This man simply took it to the level of guns and bullets. That's the only difference. I mentioned before to another audience, it wasn't here on YouTube. I mentioned before to an audience, something called, I entitled it A White Confession. And it was wherein a local non-black Arab man told me about how the woman he wanted to marry was black and his family wasn't with it. They were going to disown, all of them were going to disown him. Nobody disagreed. No one stood against the rest of the family except one cousin he didn't know that well. He later found out that that cousin had married a black woman and the family had disowned him. That's because whiteness is more important to many people than their own religions are. They may not realize it, or they might realize it, whichever one is the case. If you are black, white supremacists are your enemy wherever you are, wherever you might be. And if you are really a Muslim, white supremacists are your enemy too. You could be a compromised fake Muslim and you're not a real Muslim, and they still gonna be your enemy. So the Muslim Ummah has a new lesson from New Zealand, and that new lesson is actually the same lesson as before, but it's the same topic, the same information, but it's just been taught in a new lesson yesterday, which is that white supremacy and Islam are mortal enemies. There is no such thing as black supremacy at this point. So you're going to sit up and tell me, some of you are going to try to silence me by telling me, yeah, but Islam is not for black supremacy or green supremacy or polka dot supremacy for that matter. And it's true. Racial supremacy is not necessarily sanctioned in our religion. I get that. Ethnic and linguistic supremacy is not sanctioned either. But you don't have to tell this to anybody except white people. There is no black supremacy. There is no red supremacy. There's no green supremacy because there are no green people for that matter. The Incredible Hulk is a two-dimensional fictional character. So don't tell me green and polka dot. They don't even exist. Only white supremacy exists on this planet. There is no other racial supremacy at this point. And that's why it is that Muslims are going to have to live in reality and realize that white supremacy is our enemy. And that extends all the way down to the individual level. If you think that skin bleach makes sense and skin self-tanning lotions would not make any sense, and why would anyone buy them, then you're a damn white supremacist. These white supremacists are drawing a line in the sand, and they're telling you they don't care about your opinions and how much you accept the nonviolent versions of white supremacy. They're against you because you're not white. If you're not willing to draw that same line in the sand and say, well, you rat bastard racist, you subhuman hypocrite, we're against you because you're a rat bastard racist subhuman hypocrite, and you don't understand the equality of people, so you are our mortal enemy. Then, if you cannot draw the line in that same line in the sand and say exactly that same thing, then you are a damn fool. And I hope that somebody gets you next, because the Ummah does not need you as an individual. We don't need people like this amongst our ranks. The entire cultures of Muslims have bought into white supremacy. Two of them may have even started white supremacy, to be honest with you, if you really want to know the truth. Because before Europeans became white supremacists and color prejudice, you can point to evidence that in India it existed, and among the Persians it existed, specifically the ones who conquered India. So, we don't need you. This is a new lesson from New Zealand, and if you cannot learn that lesson, then just go and join a church or a synagogue or something. Just leave us, because we don't need you amongst us. We don't need you praying with us. We don't need you becoming imams and maulanas and sheikhs and teaching the religion and failing to understand this lesson. I may not be an imam, but I can tell you that a disqualification for any imam or anyone that wants to teach any kind of religious classes is the failure to understand the global nature and threat of white supremacy. That's real. And I make no apologies for saying so. If you are any kind of Muslim leader, even just a prayer leader, and you do not understand this about white supremacy, then you are unfit to teach and tell anybody anything about this religion. Other than that, if you studied for 30 years and you didn't get this and understand this, you're unqualified. Because the biggest threat right now internationally or domestically within the US is white supremacy. You're going to have to get over your brainwashing at a very deep and rooted and subconscious level, and it's going to be frustrating for you. But if you're not ready to do it, you ain't ready to be an imam, let alone an actual sheikh or some kind of scholar. I hope that this has been a benefit.